Beth Hammond, and I live in Wynnewood, Oklahoma. I teach a variety of English classes, such as English Composition 1 and 2. I've taught seventh grade, and I taught seventh grade for 5 years. And I also taught preschool for a year. So I've taught all different levels. And right now, I have a lot of dual credit students, students who are taking the college courses their junior and senior high school year. So sometimes I go into the high schools, but mostly I'm strictly online right now.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
I'm Saina Gasri. I'm an educator from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I'm so delighted to take an opportunity to interact with you. Ma'am, I would like to pose you a question. Can I? What is
Yes.
the role of communicative skills in this 21st century?
Probably the most important skills, of course, right now would be technical. Anything that is related to computers, because artificial intelligence has everyone up in arms and everyone is worried. So being able to have the skills to be able to program and operate those kinds of things are probably going to be the most important communication skills we can have going forward. So, of course, it's always good to be a good listener and a good friend and be able to communicate effectively, right? So that your message comes through clear. But for us, when we're thinking about the 21st century in the job market, it's going to be programming.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello.
My name is Sheikh Husnia from Z.P.H Ilavaram. I am proud to take part in this interaction. I am so excited to ask you a question. Here my question is, how do you integrate technology in teaching English?
So I'm pretty much am teaching online fully, 100%. And that has kind of been the case since COVID. And so for students in my courses, it is extremely important that they understand how to operate what we call the LMS, a learning management system. So when you log on, you know where to go to find your assignments and where you go to do your homework. Now, for us, writing has mostly become technical, meaning that we need a computer, right? Most usually we don't compose with a pen or a pencil and paper anymore. So for us, technology has been a 100% switch to technology. I only have maybe a couple of students each semester who are still composing on paper. So integrating that into what we're doing in the classroom has been very simple because everyone pretty much has technology here. Hello.
My name is Radhika. I'm studying sixth grader. I'm studying sixth class. Can I ask you a question, ma'am?
Yes.
Would you please tell us about technical writing?
You know, there are very many different kinds of writing. And so, for every different kind of writing that you have, such as academic or social, media, or journalism, business, and technical, all the rules are extremely different. So, even in business writing, the rules are different than technical writing. So in business writing, you still might be looking to correspond to someone individually, maybe addressing them by their title and things like that. But with technical writing, it's very short, it's very to the point, and it's what we call linear writing. Everything is in order, step by step by step. Think of it as writing instructions to things or emergency messages that might go out in communities. So very short, very to the point, and very exact. There's no wiggle room as to the meaning. And when we write for other disciplines, a lot of times, sometimes people can interpret things differently. But with technical writing, we want it to be very precise so that the message is extremely clear.
Thank you. Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
My name is Mamata. I'm an educator. I'm from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. It is an honor for me to meet you today virtually. Here, my question is: what is Oklahoma famous for?
Oh my gosh. The very most wonderful thing about Oklahoma is it is a Native American Indian state. And that's what we're known for. We're known for the entire state being very culturally um, leaning towards that Native American culture. We have a lot of different tribes that are represented in Oklahoma. And so one of the symbols that they had was the buffalo. And just about everywhere in Oklahoma, you'll see signs of Native American Indians. So, for example, a lot of names of towns are named after Indian names, such as Chickasha, Okmulgee, McAllister. And just a little bit from me, there's a river called the Washita River, and it was named by the Indians. And so that's probably the thing that we're most famous for. When we think about manufacturing goods, probably the one thing most Americans would associate Oklahoma with would be oil, such as, the oil that you use in cars or lamps or for your house. So oil and gas is another big, big part of Oklahoma.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
How are you, ma'am? How are you, ma'am?
I am very good. How are you doing?
I'm good, ma'am. My name is Roshni. I'm an educator from Z.P.H School, Ilavaram. I feel great to interact with you today. I would like to ask a question.
Sure.
Here, my question is: what is your favorite word in English and why?
I love the Little House on the Prairie series. Has anyone read that there?
No.
Have you read? Oh my gosh. It's by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And she talks about being a little girl on the prairies of Oklahoma and Kansas and up through there in the 1800s. So it was when the country was first settled. The Indians were still here. The cowboy and Indian top days. So it was just past that. And so their family lived in a log cabin, and they actually came from the west and the east, came from the east in a wagon pulled by horses. And so she tells all of the funny stories, the things that happened to her, as well as a lot of sad things that happened along the way too. So if you get the chance to read The Little House on the Prairie, that's a wonderful book.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're Did y'all see my granddaughter pop in the screen there?
This is Meghana, an educator from G.P.H School, Ilavaram. I am privileged to meet you today on this great occasion. I have a question. My question
Yes.
is: how do you teach composition?
Okay, so I like to have students think about starting simple. Okay, so if you start simple and you start with the basics and then you add to, then that makes it very simple. So we start very easy. Okay, we write just a paragraph or two, and then we look at what is going wonderful with your writing, the things that you're doing great at. And then we take a look and make a list of the things that you need to improve on. And so once we make our list of things to improve on, then I will say, well, let's do some practice. So writing takes a lot of practice. but it is a skill that is easily learned, okay, because it has rules. Just like driving down the road, you know, when you come to certain signs, you know what those mean or what to do. And so writing is the same way. You know, when you get to the end of the sentence and you see a period or a question mark or exclamation point, that it's time to stop and read that with that emotion. And so we start thinking about looking at the writing as the reader would, and then putting ourselves in many different our shoes or put many different hats on our head, you know, because as a writer, we're not just the writer, we're the editor, we're the proofreader, we're the publisher, we're the marketer, we're a lot of different things. And so that's the way I like to approach it. And I don't like to think of it as me teaching you, but rather me sharing with you everything that I know about reading and writing. And so starting simple with very simple sentences and building small paragraphs and building up to larger ones. And so that's how I like to teach it.
Thank you, ma'am.
I am very good. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. This is Karina. I'm from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I would like to ask you a question.
Yes.
Here, my question is: what is most important? Reading, writing, listening, speaking?
Oh my gosh. I think that depends on what you want to do in your career. So, for example, if you were wanting to be a listener, a good listener, you know, teachers are very good listeners. We have to really listen and pay attention. But if you wanted to be, if writing was the most important, then maybe that you're going to be a lawyer or something who prepares briefs. And so writing would be very important. However, maybe speaking is, maybe you're going to be a politician, or maybe you're going to have a job where you get up and you present things to other people. In that case, speaking would probably be very important. But if you think about being like a policeman or a fireman or something like that, the ability to read is extremely important, as well as the ability to listen. And so I think the importance of the skill comes when you think about your career field. And so it would depend on what you want to do with your life.
Thank you. Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
This is Bushra, an 8th grade student. I am from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I would like to ask a question.
Yes.
What should we do to improve our pronunciation?
You know, the more you can read and the more you can write, and the more you can like listen to audio tapes of readings, the better you will become, because that is nothing but practice. If you think about it, if you wanted to be a really good soccer player, you would practice a lot. If you wanted to play the guitar, you would practice a lot. And so the more we can practice, the better we can get. And writing is a skill that can be learned. So therefore, it is extremely important that you practice. So the more practice you can do, the better.
Thank you.
Hello.
This is Subramanya Srinivas, a 7th grade student from Z.P.H School, Ilavaram. I take this session.
Yes.
I take this opportunity as a golden opportunity. I would like to ask a question. Can I ask, ma'am?
Yes.
What are the special features of British literature?
Okay, so when we think about British literature, one of the things that really stands out is the royal family. And there's a lot of formality and pomp and circumstance in British literature. They're very focused on the rules of society, because things are so much more formal there. But they're also focused on symbolism, because you know the crown has a lot of symbols that mean a lot of different things, and so that's very important to them as well. But one of the things you might not have heard much about is something called absurdity. Has anyone there heard of absurdity reading or absurdity writings?
No.
Anyone? No? Okay. And so absurdity is when we think of things as being kind of out of whack, absurd, outlandish. Uh, but it's not just the story or the storyline, it's the characters. When we think about absurdity, we're thinking about the interaction between the characters and how absurd that might could be. And a lot of times with absurd writing, we don't get a true conclusion. It's just kind of left for you to interpret what is best. And so British literature encompasses a lot of that historical, royal, formal, but yet absurd when it comes to looking at characters. So those are the main characteristics, I think, of the British literature.
My name is Z.P.H.S. I am situated from the Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. I feel great pride to interact with you. I have a question. Can I ask?
Yes.
Who inspired you to become a teacher?
Oh, wow. So when I was 4 years old, I loved to read. And one day I was watching my grandmother cook, and I probably was underfoot and in her way. And she says, "Why don't you go write down all of these wonderful recipes?" And so I made a cookbook. And then when I got to seventh grade, I always loved to read and write. But when I got to seventh grade, I had a teacher who really inspired me to write down everything that was going on in my life and to record what was going on around me. So I would have to say that my seventh grade English teacher, Mrs. Jennings, was probably my most motivational teacher.
Thank you. Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
This is Lakshman, an 8th grader from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. It's honor to meet you today virtually, ma'am. Here,
Thank you.
my question is, what are the common terms of the polite that an average Britisher used to sound polite?
Thank you so much for that, y'all. I'm sorry. Okay, so my degree, master's, is in literature, British, and so although I'm American and we don't use the same phrases, some of the phrases that the British use would be top of the morning and good morning. Okay, they fully pronounce their words. So in English, in the European side, there's no dropping of letters or anything. But in America, we shorten everything. So to see you in the morning, I would say howdy or hi, y'all. But when we think about the U.S. one versus the standard European, they're very formal. Hello, good morning, greetings. Those are the ones that they would use. So for me, that's very different because we're not very formal here when we think of things like that. But the British have kept that formality with the language, and they haven't changed that. They don't have the slang like we do here. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello, ma'am.
Good morning.
My name is Jagdish, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. My name is Jagdish. I'm studying 8th grade at Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. Can I ask you a question, ma'am?
Yes.
What are the main features of American literature?
So, we talked about the British ones, being absurd and very formal. But with the American literature, we focus a lot on the social classes. So we get all the different tiers, everyone from rich to middle to poor. And there's a lot of writings about all those different types of people. But one of the things they really like to write about as well is politics and the state of money, to say it simply. So our economy, things like that. But there is a big push to write things in a very, what we call satirical, or more of a sarcasm way. Cynicism would be a good way to put that, So we might poke fun at ourselves a lot to get people laughing, but yet we want people to really step back and look at their own lives and go, wow, this is a revelation to me, and this is what happened to this person. So I can relate to that because I'm in the same boat. So that's a lot. It would be mostly social, economics, and politics, I think.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
I am Sashida, the sound grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I am very much pleased to ask my question here. My question
Yes.
is, how important is English for students in their future?
This has become very controversial lately. If you're following the world, um, what would you call it? World politics, maybe, I would guess I would say, and economics, then you'll know that there's been a big push to kind of eliminate uh, um, English as more of the universal language, but it is still universal language. So it is extremely important to learn English because that is, what most countries can communicate in when it comes to business wise. Although, has anyone ever been to an opera? Anyone been to the opera? Do you know what opera is? Most of you? Have you opera? No? No. Oh, okay. So opera is it's kind of like a play, but it's all done through song. And the songs are usually in another language, like Italian or maybe German. And so if you were to go to the opera to watch the people perform on stage here, they would sing. But I don't speak those languages. And so on the back of your chair, but on the back of every chair, they have this little box, and it translates for you the singer's words, and it's usually translated in English. So even though English is our universal language and it's extremely important that you learn it, I think it's also very important that people learn as many languages as they can. When we look at some of our former first ladies of the U.S., we had one who spoke 7 languages. Uh, but English is still predominantly universal across the world. So that has to be, the language that we're at least teaching the majority of the countries to speak, so we can all communicate freely and easily. So very important.
My name is Akash. I am an eighth grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I feel it is a great opportunity to interact with you. I would like to ask a question.
Yes.
What is your teaching philosophy?
What is my teaching philosophy? I'm student-centered, and I also have a very flipped classroom. And I think it's extremely important that students have choices and are very involved in their learning process. Therefore, I have a very, what we call, student-centered classroom. Okay, everything that we do is driven by, first off, your background knowledge and what you know. So I need to know what you know so that we can take everything to that higher level. And so it's extremely important that I can tie whatever we're doing in the classroom to real world, because then it's relevant to you and you understand why you're learning something and how it can be useful to your life. So that's my philosophy.